YouTubers, welcome to another special and very sought after edition of Trends in the Housing Market. Back by popular demand, I have quite a few people asking for Trends in the Housing Market to come back, so I am here forefront in my studio, your humble servant, Mike Martins, bringing you stories from all over the English-speaking world that is struggling with housing crisis. And housing is the biggest topic on everyone's minds, and the number one hottest topic. You could eavesdrop, listening to people on the street, listening to people walking to work, or listening to people on transit. All they talk about is housing and how it's affecting their families and their lives. Broadcasting out of Merritt, BC, home of country music. I have relocated myself into a small town 2 to 2.5 hours out of the major city of Vancouver, and I'm loving it. I ended up, follow me on Living the Dream series, people. I have a section of my channel called Living the Dream. I ended up buying a gigantic 11-bedroom house for $260,000 on a 0.9 acre of land. Gigantic garden coming up this summer with the kids. Don't forget to follow that. Please follow me and what's going on with that. And motivating, not bragging. 260. What's 260 in Sydney? You can't even buy a one-bedroom. What's 260 in Vancouver? You can't even buy a parking spot. I'm just telling and letting people know that there is more bang for the buck out there. Get out of your cities. And today is March 6, 2017. And before we jump into it, I actually want to let you guys know that Janet Yellen has commented this morning on, has discussed, and Bloomberg was covering it this morning, I was listening to it, that they are looking at raising, the feds are looking to raise interest rates in the United States. And then I think that's the first step that's going to cause a global correction in the housing crisis all over the globe. Every English-speaking country that's listening to me right now that's in this predicament will be fixed. It's kind of funny. I have a Portuguese channel where I'm very famous on, like way out there. And that's more politics. In the English world, it's more housing. You see how it's a bit different when it comes to different demands in different regions of the world? Anyways, let's start with this. This article here is from Australia, but it covers every English-speaking country because it covers a topic. I'll read the headline to you guys. House prices. When will we get to the point that we just say no? Am I right? Yeah? Huh? That says it itself. That goes across the board. For all you New Zealanders, all you Kiwis out there, Londoners, Canadians, and Americans watching this, this one's all for you guys. Housing prices can't keep rising forever. At some point, everyone will just have to calm down and refuse to pay too much for a tiny place that isn't even in the area they really want to live. Bang for the buck, people. Always go for the bang for the buck. Right. We talked to two experts about how prices can keep rising, if price drop is inevitable, and whether it will cause a U.S.-style collapse. Then it goes into, people are acting irrational. Any rational person might look at what's happening in the housing market on a face value and refuse to buy. But this isn't the case. The latest house price figures of February show prices, particularly in Sydney and Melbourne, rising again. Not in Vancouver, where in a pit of irrational exuberance, LF property economist David Lindsay says, they usually use these big words so you usually don't understand what's really going on. Which is smart on their end. Basically, he thinks people aren't acting the way you would normally expect, and so, despite house prices becoming increasingly unaffordable for most Australians in some areas, people are still buying property. Why? Mr. Lindsay says, problem lies squarely with the banks. Not only, in quotations, have you got irrational, exuberant population when it comes to housing, but you also got a banking system that is running like a Ponzi finance scheme, he says. And if you guys follow Max Kaiser, he talks about Ponzi scheme every 3 to 12 minutes. He brings it up. And really good guy. These things keep going on until A, the banks cannot keep lending speculative home buyers, or B, we get to the point where people say, this is crazy, I'm not going to buy in this housing market. Well, the second they raise rates, things are gonna really poop the scoop. But maybe this isn't the doomsday scenario some think it is. But it is important to note that not all economists are agreed on this point. RMIT property economist Professor Chris Eves says that the situation is not a catastrophe that some say it is. To each his own, right? One of these things that sets Australians apart is that there are sectors that are currently oversupplied. Too many houses. And there is potential that there won't be much market demand for those types of properties, which could lead house prices to fall, he says. But it's still going to be across the board. Okay. Instead, Mr. Evans thinks that this is just a part of nature of housing prices, which go through ups and downs. Yeah, this is a roller coaster up. This is one of those roller coasters you don't want to ride in the theme park because it keeps going up into the clouds. He says that the Gold Coast is a typical example of an area where there are regular changes in demand, where foreign buyers' demand goes down because prices have maybe gone too high or there is not enough supply. Buyers withdraw from the market. People are looking to park money anywhere they can. This can have some impact on the market, which then forces developers to pull back for a while. But once prices have fallen, you get people coming back into the market and prices rise again. This is known as a housing cycle. Of course it is known as a housing cycle, but this is a crazy cycle. It's like I said, this topic, this specific article covers every English-speaking country on what they're going through right now. What are signs? What are the signs that are coming to an end? It's mathematically impossible to predict when the housing boom will end, according to Mr. Lindsay. I'm thinking that when the U.S. raises interest rates next week, it might bring a correction to the housing crisis, like I said at the beginning of the video. The problem so far is while first-time buyers have been priced out of the market, investors are able to use their existing house to get another loan. Very dangerous. Taking out those big ticket loans to buy yourselves cars and big ticket items. Very dangerous. Remember I warned you guys about that? That is, if you buy a $1 million house, you're not making profit from it, and the bank revalues your house and says it's worth $1.1 million, you get the extra $100,000 of your unrealistic capital gains that you've leveraged against now. You also have foreign buyers who may be seeing the boom in Australia housing prices as an investment opportunity. If, as some have called for, the banking regulator steps in and tightens investor market to the foreign buyer market, this might seem to slow in house pricing growth. Like in Vancouver, what they did, they put the property transfer tax, foreign tax, buyer's tax, all the taxes that they added, has pretty much brought housing sales to zero, like to stagnant levels. And nothing's selling, by the way. Everything's for sale. Nothing's selling. So, is this like what happened in the U.S.? Mr. Lindsay warns that this is the potential to be like what happened in the U.S., maybe even worse. Yes, it's a tsunami, people. Tsunami. In Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, it's nothing but speculative, credit-fueled housing bubble. It's what happened in Ireland and what happened in lots of parts of the United States in the past decade, he says. A lot of people thought the housing market was invincible, like the Titanic. Remember that? Remember what happened to the Titanic? Yeah. Invincible, that it could only go up. One day it crashed and burned a lot of people and the financial system along with it. But Mr. Evan offers even more tempered views. And it goes into saying, should we still be worried? And it goes, absolutely. A lot of the property still being developed, particularly CBDs in inner city areas for foreign investor market. The issues there is that they leave the market. Would the domestic market be able to take over the demand? Mr. Lindsay knows. Mr. Lindsay says, at the bottom line, it's not. So yeah, no, it won't be taken over by domestic. It's impossible for it to be taken over by domestic, unless the minimum wage goes up to $90 an hour to offset that. And I don't think employers are going to start paying you $90 an hour. If there are fewer people buyer properties and more supply, then it follows that prices will go down. This is problematic. If you own a property in one of these areas, it's basically worth less than what you bought it for. Remember, I kept talking about that going underwater. But this might not happen for some time, Mr. Evans suggests. What it means for the first-time home buyers is that they may be renting for the foreseeable future. So renters down under in the Gold Coast, hang in there, guys. I'm with you guys. People living in New Zealand, Vancouver, Toronto, I'm with you guys. I could feel the burn. I felt the burn for years, and I did the next best thing. I moved to a small town, and I've never looked back. Let's move on now. We got a story here out of Vancouver. And this one's kind of touchy. It's a really touchy story. It goes on to say, Vancouver in British Columbia says, should Vancouverites embrace the death of the single-family home? People are coming to terms. Stakeholders in Vancouver real estate markets say growing long-term rental stocks should be a top priority. This is by John Hernandez. Demonstrators gather protesting against high housing prices for single-family homes in downtown Vancouver, British Columbia, May 23rd, 2015. This is an older thing that happened in the city. The article is from March 3rd, 2017. So don't panic. It's not an old article I'm reading. It's just basically showing the protest in the summertime. Because right now it's snowing, so there won't be too many people protesting outside. It is no secret millennials with the modest income in Vancouver. That's true. Millennials have a very modest income in Vancouver may never fulfill the dream of owning a single-family detached home in the city. The benchmark price for a detached home is hovering around $1.4 million, a figure long outreach for the bulk of Vancouverites who are just beginning to carve their careers in the city. I really feel for them, man. Some have responded to the soaring costs through protests, while others wait quietly for the bubble to burst. But according to the property developer Bew Jarvis, millennials might be better off managing their expectations. We are in a transit here in the lower mainland of BC where we're seeing the death of the single-family home, said Senior Vice President, Wers Group Real Estate, the agency behind some of the Vancouver's largest upcoming property developments. Jarvis was one of the many real estate stakeholders who helped craft a list of coming ground principles that will help solve Vancouver's affordability crisis. He was joined by tenants, landlords, realtors, and academics, and more. These guys should be making these videos, not me. A key theme that emerged: embrace long-term renting because it might be the best option. You see, long-term renting, guys, is not a bad thing if you're investing in the market, or you're investing in a business, or you're investing in entrepreneurship, or you're building other ways to build capita. That's when you rent, because you kind of don't want to invest, repair, and property tax and home insurance. You kind of want to keep it as simple as possible, but you also want to make sure you focus on your endeavors that you're doing. So if you're doing endeavors like I did in Vancouver for many years, I was all different types of businesses, reaching in to different ideas, going to seminars, being part of the business community, understanding what's happening, right? And I've done that and speculated here and there in different markets. I don't know if you guys follow me when I was doing the marijuana market with the stocks when they were going through the roof. Some of you guys remember that last year before Christmas. Anyways, easing the squeeze. The Vancouver-based lobby group Generation Squeeze led the calibration and has since released 10 principles that stakeholders will believe ease of some of the stress of younger generation facing an uphill battle against affordability. So domestically people can't afford to buy in Vancouver. A majority of the property is bought by foreign investors. They came in, they bought, and now they're sitting on properties. And it's really hard because they're all for sale. Well, not all. There's a majority of them that are for sale. I've seen quite a bit. I've seen quite a few land developments where land consolidations. And there's quite a few houses on the market there. They're not moving, you know. The reality is that more and more young people will not be able to save enough money to become a homeowner in Metro Vancouver. And let's correct this. Not only Metro Vancouver, but we're talking about Richmond. We're talking about Burnaby. We're talking about North Van. We're talking about even parts of Surrey, even White Rock, even way out until Chilliwack, places like that. You're still looking for a decent-sized home with a decent backyard. You're still looking at $600-700 large, $800 large to get in. I mean to buy a home. And the down payment, if you're looking at 15-20%, it's still a big chunk of change. Things are breaking down as home prices leave earnings behind. Kershaw says that the part of the solution is to come to terms with the fact that long-term renting is the only housing option for many millennials and for communities to make a concerted effort to increase rental accommodation. I'll leave a link below the article. It goes on for hours. Just keeps going here. Let me get to this part right here. Kershaw added that the Vancouver is starting to make strides towards creating more stable rental market through policies like empty homes tax, which is nice. We don't need increasingly revise our visions of tax policy to make sure we're committed to homes first and investing second. So that's what's important. Housing first, then investing second. Let's move on. I got this one. This is another one that ties into the first one. The second one I read, sorry, about Vancouver. This one's out of Australia. This is a good article. Pessimistic Outlook. Australians expect housing ability to deteriorate further by 2027. 2027. So if you're watching this in 2027, I'm going to tag this video below, 2027. If you found this video and you're watching it, thank you for watching in the future. NAB report. Australians are more pessimistic about the future of housing affordability and living costs than other lifestyle factor in the next 10 years, a new report shows. Go figure. Australian proper can't even own in his own country. What does that tell you? Domestic can't even own. What does that tell you? Free market, sold to the highest bidder. And experts warn that the growing cost of housing in capital and cities is having a knock-on effect onto business confidence. After surveying 2,300 people and 50 business, 88% of respondents agree that Australia was a great place to live in quotations. Then it goes to say in 2017, but the outlook for in a decade's time was far more grim. National Australian banks reported life in the lucky country. What makes Australia great, released on Thursday, found telecommunication, entertainment, and public transport were the only lifestyle areas expected to improve in the next decade, out of 26 measured when asked which factors they expect would deteriorate the most by 2027. The pessimism was also being felt by the business sector. While 80% of the businesses surveyed claimed Australia was a great place to live to have a business in 2017, 6 in 10 thought the same thing would be true in 2027. There is a clear message of anxiety in the future coming for Australian consumers and business. And it could be high house prices in capital cities weighing out on business confidence, NAB chief economist Alan Oster said. NAB research had found slowing retail sales in cities and the same time as an unexpected increase in retail spending in the country's areas, he said. It's hard to explain why, but my guess is that the city where there are much higher house prices, people are less inclined to spend on discretionary things and more inclined to put money into their mortgage. It's what you call house broke. You are house broke. Despite this, a report found those in rural towns and the bush expected, most factors making Australia a great place to live now deteriorate much more than those living in the regional capital cities. So this is a beautiful graph here that goes, I'm going to leave a link below for this one, guys. It's got an entire graph here. And it actually goes on to say there were some difference in relation to age, with younger Australians more optimistic across nearly all factors than older Australians. The results varied across the country. People in South Australia and Northern Territory more positive in relation to travel time, living costs, and housing. There is a clear message of anxiety in the future coming for Australians consumers and businesses, Mr. Oster said. Australians' indefinite access to social welfare, living costs, tax levels, jobs, and housing affordability as the key factors they expect will deteriorate the most in the next 10 years. Consumers are now saying they expect very little progress in the areas already holding Australia back now. You know what, guys? Export. Produce and export. Create jobs. Produce and export. Canned goods, food, I don't know, anything. Make Australia the bike capital of the world. Bicycles. Fabricating, taking its minerals out of the outback to fabricate and build bikes and export Australian bikes all over the world. I'm down to buy a bike made in Australia. Get the jobs, create 10, 15,000 jobs, make Australia the bike capital. I'm just giving an example. Bicycle capital. I will buy a bicycle for my son from Australia. I will buy a bicycle for my wife and myself from Australia. Start producing, start exporting. You can't depend on housing to stimulate an economy. It does not work. And it's actually worse than oil. See what's happening in Venezuela? Venezuela put everything into oil. Australia's putting everything into the housing market. And student loans too, from what I heard. Don't do it. Stimulate the market with jobs. Export, 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 export. I will definitely buy a bike made in Australia. Produce it. Take your minerals out of the ground. Hire mining local Australian proper companies to take the minerals. Hire mills to produce and fabricate the metals. Hire a gigantic plant. Build a gigantic plant. Hire people to build and fabricate bicycles. Bicycles aren't going anywhere. People are always going to ride bikes. Doesn't matter how good the car gets, how good trains get, how good airplanes get. People want bikes. This is just me talking and giving an idea. That's just bicycles. Imagine we get into more. Let's continue here. Out of New Zealand, Monday, March 6, 2017, the magic fix-it figure, 35,000. What does that mean? Let's read this article. There are one big surprise last year to the real estate industry. The price of property kept going higher and higher. And just when you thought the ceiling has been reached, the prices smashed through as most of us U.S. property watchers looked on open-mouthed. Foreign money, some of it dirty, played a major part in knocking residents out of the park when it came to bidding at auctions. So they have auctions in New Zealand. I'm not sure if they came to Toronto or Vancouver yet, but they have auctions in New Zealand. People sit there and start bidding. I know Australia does have that. They sit there and bid on houses and see who takes it. And everyone applauds whoever wins and gives them a pat on the back. It's like, yeah, you did it, man. You did it. You bought a house worth 300 grand that's worth you bought a house for $4 million that's worth 300 grand. Good for you. Too many people had too much cash. They wanted it squirreled away in safe haven. So much cash was sloshing around at one point last year that even some of the banks got humpy as they weren't needed for home loans. It's an old chestnut, but the housing shortage, that won't be fixed for a generation, also played its part. But how many homes in the city is short of? It depends when you listen to. But I think the economists have Westpac may have it brought with significant figure of 35,000. That's how many the city is short of. And this looks like it's coming from Auckland. Yes, it's Auckland, New Zealand. All my Kiwis down there watching, big hug to you guys. I'm with you guys. New homes being built, of course, but most prices not in reach of young people who are often also saddled with student debt totaling tens of thousands of dollars. You bought into the student loan thing too, didn't you? Pay it off. Get rid of it. Then there are low interest rates. The OCR 1.75% and floating mortgage rates are well under 6%, but they are starting to track upwards thanks to the banks. It might be the Trump bump, to be honest with you. While low rates have allowed home buyers to borrow more, and rates will one day be back at the 7s and 8s, and unless there is a wage growth, some unfortunate souls will face some tough times as home loans become unaffordable. So where does this leave 2017? Well, there are few foreign buyers around. Investors are looking for cheaper property in regions, giving Auckland's first-time home buyers a bit of air, and property prices are showing signs of coming down. In fact, the economic forecaster Infometrics reckons house prices will be down 12% by 2020. That's less than 3 years away. Wow, I'm getting old. Of course, prices will drop 12% on New Year's Eve 2019. They will trickle down over the coming months, and interest rates will trickle up. But rest assured, the routine will happen every 8 years or so, come rain or shine. Let me know. Weigh in on that. Comment below. Every 8 years. It's been going on for 12, 13 years now. Let's keep going here. Let me take a sip of my coffee here, people, please. It tastes so good. We got here Code Red 20. Code Red out of Toronto. Code Red out of Toronto. Code Red. The 20-year wait to afford housing in Toronto. 20-year wait. So if you're 20, you're going to buy a place at 40. It's got to hurt. It will take a typical young person almost 2 decades to afford a down payment on an average GTA home. That has got to hurt, people. I'll leave a link below for this. For 24-year-olds, Fatin Chowhurdy, the idea of being able to one day afford a dream home starting to feel like a fantasy. Almost 20 years. That's how long it will take the typical young person working full-time to save 20% down for a payment on the average GTA home, according to a new numbers provided exclusively to Metro. It's 13 years longer than it took people back in 1917-6, adjusted for inflation and assuming a person can save about 15% of their income. For Faith Chowdhury, the idea of being able to one day afford a dream home is starting to feel like a fantasy. I can't even contemplate the idea of home ownership, said the 24-year-old. It's definitely frustrating. Chowhurdy lives with his parents in Mississauga and spends about 40-minute commute to Toronto every day for work. He's been searching for a shared apartment in the city but hasn't found much in his budget at $800 a month. And things are now, by the time he pays for transit and other expenses, there's not much left to pay out for any kind of down payment. It's not that I don't want to have a home one day, Cowdery said. It's just I don't think I can really have that, given that I am right now at what the prices are. And reality is a huge shift from where people his age a few generations ago said. Paul Kreisiger, University of British Columbia professor under the Generation Squeeze. Kershaw's data, crunched from housing income figures collected by the Canadian Real Estate Association and Statistics Canada, shows that people who bought homes in the mid-1980s could save for a starter home in just a few years. People who bought homes back then are sitting on gold mines, while young people starting careers now face the opposite. It's the brain drain. A lot of people leaving cities, a lot of people leaving in general to other affordable cities. Way out, like Muskoka and way out in Cayuga and stuff if you're in Ontario. You know, it's like an escalator that's going down so quickly, and the younger demographic is trying to adapt, Kershaw said. Millennials try to get more degrees, work more hours, and take more debt, but it doesn't help. And it says here, the dream that many people grew up with, that if they just worked hard, they'd be able to afford a house. It seems so unrealistic that it's ridiculous to even think about it. Like I said, you got to network. You got to just do some sort of side business from home if you're renting. Something on Amazon, anything you could get your hands on, or anything you could do to start your own business, entrepreneurship. Watch my segment in my channel on starting a small business. Anyways, another one here out of Australia, and this is kind of important because this should flag people to get out of the major cities. It says country towns will start to empty out while the rise of Australia's super cities. Sydney could stretch out to the Central Coast, Melbourne could hit Geelong, and Brisbane could merge with the Gold Coast as super cities start to take over Australia. So people, get out of the super cities. Get out, network, do something outside the city. Country towns could be mostly emptied out by the Aussie outback, left almost abandoned by most nations. Population will flock to Australia's major capitals, Sydney, Perth, Brisbane, and Melbourne. Well, let's create a new town. Let's call it New Mike. Name it after me, New Mike Martin's town. And smack dab 2 hours away from all these major cities. According to the Australian, 2 in 3 people will live in our main cities in the future, as Australia's population soars to almost 30 million. But how much of that is Australian proper, domestic? That's the thing, right? If population growth, how many Australians are having kids and babies and expanding? That's the question. If population growth keeps going as it is, the four main capital cities will grow more than 2 times faster than anywhere else in Australia. For the cities to house population, more than land will need be unlocked and built for more residential housing, meaning an urban sprawl will become a massive problem. It's already starting to happen in Melbourne. On Wednesday, the Victorian government announced that it would look at unlock 17 new suburbs on the outer fringes of Melbourne and build residential areas on currently bare land. The government said it would help solve the housing affordability problems, but experts disagree. Okay, guys, in Australia, I really need someone to go out and actually find me some information. I'm having a really tough time finding anything credible. I'll leave a link below for this, and I really want you guys to get out of the city. I want to know from you guys, we already got feedback of how many empty homes there are in Toronto, 95,000, 30,000 empty homes in Vancouver. How many empty homes are in Melbourne, Sydney, Perth, all the major cities in Australia? How many empty homes are there? Is there anything that calculates how many empty homes are? Because maybe you just don't need to build more homes. You can just kind of fill in the homes that are empty. Comment below with information. How many empty homes are there in Australia? Something that's something that we could something reliable. Let me know, because I would like to know. Because a lot of people are at awe in Toronto with 95,000 empty homes, and in Vancouver with the 25,000 empty homes, and people are like, how is that even possible? It's like, well, it is possible, right? Let's go to the Telegraph in England. Homeownership in England, 30-year low. Yeah, of course. Homeownership in England has fallen to its lowest level for 30 years, with nearly half young adults now renting privately. Official figures show the level of homeownership fell 62.9% last year, the lowest proportion since 1985, and 8 points lower than the peak of 2003. The figures also show that 46.1% of people between ages 25 and 34 are renting privately, up from 24.2% in 2005 and 2006. So, councils have issued a plea, government for action boosts social housing, which declined 17.2% of households after first falling behind the private rented sector in 2011 and 2012. No, you don't need to boost social housing. Boost jobs so people could afford, and you don't need social housing, and this fixes the problem for low rent, and then people could afford to pay rents, and people could feel more proud of themselves and feel strong. Anyways. Let's go to Victoria, BC. Victoria. Very important. Victoria real estate sees an influx of offshore buyers from Vancouver. They're going there. A lot of them went to Seattle, Toronto, Portland, Oregon. Victoria home prices have surged, and the driving force behind the hot market has a familiar ring: offshore buyers. But this wave of purchasers need only to catch a 95-minute ferry ride to Vancouver Island instead of boarding long overseas flights. Our offshore market is Vancouver. It has been for the last year. Victoria Real Estate Board President Ara Balabanin said in an interview, "We've experienced the overflow from Vancouver. People are selling at very high prices over there and downscaling over here." Then they're using their tool in red letters. A housing price data center shows that home prices trending in your neighborhood. Oh, okay, never mind. It's just a link to try and sell me something. The new arrivals making the trip across the Strait of Georgia to Vancouver Island have helped push up housing prices to record highs in British Columbia's capital region, which had a population last year of nearly 384,000 residents. Strong demand and shrinking number of listings have resulted in bidding wars and sales frequently going well above asking price. In the market, sellers aren't too anxious to entertain a conditional offer, Mr. Bambolin said. "We have a stable economic situation here, which attracts a lot of people." Okay, if you say so. "The local demographic has shifted to include a wide range of ages," said Local Central 21 real estate agent Tara Hardy. Yeah, a lot of students coming over. If you're talking about the newlyweds and the nearly dead, this is probably true in the 1980s and 1990s. But the population has changed, said Mr. Hearn, who has noticed a sharp increase of buyers of various ages from the Vancouver region. The BC government implemented a 15% tax on foreign home buyers in the Vancouver area last August. And I urge New Zealand and Australia and England to do this. BC government implemented a 15% tax on foreign home buyers in Vancouver last August. Mr. Hansen said there has been a modest uptick in foreign buyers, notably from China, though she notes that the offshore purchases in Victoria aren't nearly as deep-pocketed as the ones who have snapped up luxury mansions, they're not mansions in Vancouver, by the way, luxury mansions in Vancouver in recent years. At a shopping mall, retailer Catherine Hallock staffed a Sutton Group kiosk showed that 21 out of 33 recent listings sold. Our climate is the California of Canada, Ms. Hallock said, explaining that what attraction many offer clients to Victoria. So, anyways, I want to know what you guys think here. Oh, there's a little bit here. Still, there are plenty of tales bidding wars across BC's capital region. A detached house near the University of Victoria listed for $800 large, sold late January at $921 after only 9 days on the market. The home was built in 1974, attracted 6 bidders. Mr. Caravero, who co-listed the property with his brother. So here we go. Take a look at that, guys. Now it's working out to other regions, and it's coming to a city near you. And here's another one here. I like this one, guys. Economy at mercy of Auckland's housing manufacturer. The economy is being held at mercy of Auckland's housing manufacturer, says many manufacturer says. Last month, Cadbury announced that it would be closing its Dundee factory and moving production to Australia. Air conditioning company Temporis Group chief executive Les Kendall said that the manufacturers, to survive there, must be more decision about keeping them competitive by lowering the exchange rate. He said that the Reserve Bank was too focused on cooling the housing market in Auckland. Well, on the last cycle, they said that they needed to keep up rate because the imbalances are there. So they're calling in for more political leadership. There needs to be more political leadership to push the conversation about how New Zealanders can lower its exchange rate so companies can become more competitive, says Manufacturers and Exporters Association. Its chief executive, Dieter Adams, said that the companies, to survive, they need to be price competitive. So it's all about the dollar. It's not about heart and soul, hiring your local neighbor, giving him employment, feeding his family. What happened to that? Let's go to California. California has to address its housing crisis. A serious conversation about California's housing crisis is long overdue. An ongoing lag in home construction, aggravated by the excessive regulations and state unfortunately famous for, will continue to deny millions of Californians unaffordable housing opportunities until the problem is taken seriously by state and local policymakers. Over the last decade, production of the average fewer than 80,000 homes annually, far short of the 180,000 new homes needed produced annually to keep up with need, according to the draft from the Stwadid housing assessment produced through the California Department of Housing and Community Development. Comparatively, between 1955 and 1989, California averaged more than 200,000 new homes annually. California housing crisis came down into simple economics. There is a growing demand for limited supply of housing, the particular consequences felt by millions of Californians every single day. Homeownership rates in California are the lowest they have ever been since 1940. Most renters are rent burdened, paying more than 30% of their income towards rents, and nearly third pay more than 50% income toward their housing. Given the reality that roughly 1 in 5 Californians live in property according to the Census Supplement Property Measure, a shortage of affordable housing coupled with the ongoing shortfall in housing production has certainly contributed to the growing problem of homelessness seen across the state. So guys, the whole West Coast of the United States is seeing this from Washington, Seattle area, Portland, Oregon to California. The whole West Coast is being plagued. Now, Californians that are watching this, I know there's quite a few that are actually watching this. I need you to comment below and find out how many empty homes are there in California too. Because that should be a state of emergency. If there's like 50, 60,000 empty homes, there should be a state of emergency. It should be an emergency to people that, hey, we have an emergency here. We got 60,000 empty homes. What's going on here? Because something's got to be done. You know, they could start taxing the empty homes. They could start forcing homeowners to start renting. Empty homes of homeowners to start renting out. So this could fix a lot of problems. Anyways, guys, I really wanted to send this all message out. I really want to get trends on the housing market back. A lot of people have been asking for it. They want the whole kit and caboodle across the board. What's happening in almost every English-speaking country across the board that is suffering with this. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to share this on your social media. Get it out there. Let's get this out there. And let's create channels. Let's get some people out there, some hard hitters out there, some people that could weigh in. You know, I'm not famous in the English-speaking world. I'm very famous in the Portuguese-speaking world. Go up to my YouTube channel, click on my Facebook page, and your jaw will drop when you see how many fans I have, or not only fans, but how many people follow me in the Portuguese-speaking world, all 8 countries. And I weigh in on radio stations, for like different radio stations in Portuguese Africa, Brazil, Portugal, different radio stations I'm on a weekly basis discussing politics and different things. But I need someone more in the English-speaking world, more of a heavy hitter, not a celebrity. Please, no. Don't weigh in celebrities. Just act and make movies. I need more people hard-hitting to start weighing in and getting this word out there. I plead for more people to get out there and get the word out there because housing is becoming a commodity now, and it's not. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Comment below, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and ciao.